Hi everyone, Air here, and we are exploring the Hamilton musical sensation created by Lin-Manuel in a whole different way. If you haven't checked out the first episodes, please feel free to go back. I actually am doing it in the same order that Lin-Manuel designed it because I believe that genius should not be messed with. So we're going in order. But what we're actually doing to make this profoundly different is the fact that as a human trafficking survivor and advocate and not thriver, this musical, this story hits me in such a sentimental way. I've been wanting to do this for over 4 years, and I finally have been able to get some time, be able to really dive deep into the psychology behind why this meant so much to me, even the very first time I saw it. Every single time that I put it on Spotify or I watch it on the screen. And of course, as I will always be able to throw this out there, I would love to see it in person in New York anytime of day, any day. It is just a beautiful, beautiful play. And the fact that there is so much symmetry and alignment and parallel between human trafficking and fighting for your freedom, also being a survivor, also being an advocate to this story and the way that it is shared and told in the lyrics of these songs is something that it needs to be out there. There's not a lot of survivor voices out there explaining our feelings, explaining the circumstances, and also sharing what it does not only to the individual, but to society and how it is a group fight. It's not just survivors that need to be in this war, but it needs to be advocates, and we need to actually unite as a nation, just like they do for our founding fathers and our founding nation. So this particular song is actually way more lighthearted, but when you really start to pick it apart, you can see the same type of parallels between the previous songs and this song when it comes to how human trafficking may manifest for a victim or how just it can be almost a little bit naive for the rest of the world to understand human trafficking if they've never actually taken the time and sat down and learned about it. So the Schuyler Sisters, this is the very first time that we get to hear from them, and they come as a trio. They come with Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, and all three of them are in this exploration of understanding men. They're young women. They have the glitter in their eye. They come from like a well family, and they are going downtown. They're going to where the other side of the quote unquote train tracks would be a more dangerous place or a more rough place. And they are naive. The most naive of them probably being Eliza herself, but the most wise, probably because she's the eldest, is Angelica. But Angelica also has this super inquisitive nature to her where she likes to question things and she likes to really push the envelope and even goes as far as already talking about women's rights before we even had a nation, at least in this song. So you can always look up the historical references, but they do match. Lin-Manuel did a very good job at not just creating something, but actually doing a lot of due diligence to make sure that it was told as historically accurate as it could have been while still being an entertainment piece. So I like how it starts out. Like, it starts out with there's nothing rich folks love more than going downtown and slumming it with the poor. There is this kind of allure, especially when you have this innocence to you or this naivety to you of wanting to know how other people live and kind of this allure to danger or this allure to darkness. And I think this is a very much a human nature thing. This is where the psychotherapy MCS comes out for me, is I'm very much like, ooh, like the behavior of people is very peculiar in a lot of different ways. But they're talking about, okay, these women, they're actually, I'm assuming they're coming to some type of bar, they're coming to some type of outing event where a lot of people have gathered. And they actually bring up pretty early on about daddy. And obviously, these are three sisters. So they're talking about one man, and they're saying, like, he said to be home by sundown, and he doesn't have to know. And there's kind of this rebellious nature to these girls, but also this fear. And it kind of goes back to we need to educate our children about the dangers that are actually out there in the world. They're going to naturally be inquisitive, especially if you are inspiring them to be independent or free thinkers. So, giving them the information of what to look out for when they go and explore is so critical. And that is human trafficking prevention 101 is you cannot just act like this has never happened to anyone in the entire world. You need to be able to have these conversations with your children, or at least be able to put them in environments where they can be taught these lessons in order for them to be safe in this world. But furthermore, educating yourself before you can even do that. So they're talking about the revolution. It's happening in New York. Again, we've covered already while New York is so sentimental to me personally, as this was where a lot of my trauma actually occurred through these events. But New York is a very rough place in some areas. And even the nicer areas, you have to be on the lookout and you have to be aware and just really mindful. I don't want to make anybody ever feel like they have to live in fear. That's not going to be my objective. My objective is always to add mindfulness to your environment. But, people are shouting here. There's violence around, and this is not even just at the rough parts of town. But there's also this new ideas in the air. And I love that because I can always use that as a pun with new ideas in the air because I always have different new ideas and explorations. But in this case, like they're really challenging the status quo. And for those that are in human trafficking advocacy awareness and just trying to bring out new ideas to be like, okay, something's wrong here. Here are some possible solutions or some possible ways that we can tackle these issues together. Eliza is looking for a mind at work. And Angelica's also looking for a mind at work, but they're very different minds. This is where a little bit of some cultural differences as far as the culture back then versus the culture today is, going to be highlighted. This is not a perfect parallel, but I can relate this to modern day times. A lot of young women, especially in the concept of Romeo and Juliet trafficking instances, where there's a older gentleman or a gentleman that has power over a young woman or even gives gifts or affection or false love to be able to fulfill something that maybe the woman, or in this case, the girl, may have not been receiving in other ways. So Eliza's looking for a mate. Angelica's working for somebody of like influential change and mindset power. But all three of them are there. They are all, in their fanciness. They definitely are standing up out from the crowd, which, that does kind of put a little bit of a target on your back if you put it into human trafficking. But in this case, it's more, I think, based off of like their inquisitive nature of just trying to figure out the other side. And they just don't know any better. Again, they're naive. They're wearing their best of their best in some shady places because they just don't get it. And they easily get approached based off of this and not necessarily by the best people. I think what's really interesting is the first person that they vocalize that approaches these three girls is Aaron Burr. And she goes, "You disgust me." And that is really going back to the fact that the very first person even start this narrative of what could be seen as a tragic ending for our hero is again Burr. And that is the closest parallel I have to a trafficker in this story or a criminal in this story, other than the parliament of separating the nations overall. So I just found it super interesting on how Aaron Burr is the one that I coordinate to, the villain or the trafficker or the one that's really trying to play up power dynamics to these young girls. And he's very much approaching these girls the same way a trafficker would approach these girls in this instance. He's like, you can trust me, baby. Like, I'm a trust fund baby. Baby, you can trust me. Like, so many puns are in that alone, but that is one of the easiest ways that Romeo and Juliet circumstances and human trafficking happen. It's the allure of, I'm going to buy you all of these gifts. I'm going to shower you with attention. I'm going to highlight you and make you feel like the most beautiful, wonderful woman in the world. Just trust me. And that is not how trust is supposed to be built. Trust takes time and it takes a lot of reassurance as far as consistency and making sure that this person has the best intentions for you and that you also have a voice in your relationship. So, all in all, and it just keeps going on with these different types of people kind of staking their claim or trying to meet with these girls. And Angelica is actually looking, I believe, for Thomas Jefferson because she's trying to get human rights into the narrative of what's going on in the sense of women's rights. And there's a lot of different ways that we could approach this. I know that several women out there would say that they're feminist, and feminist is a very controversial topic, I think, overall, on like what defines a feminist and what doesn't define a feminist. But in the case of being able to vote, being able to understand like the rights of your body and the laws of your body, like those type of things, I think are very basic rights of like, okay, I should have autonomy on my body. And I need to be fully educated in order to make the correct decisions for my body, but not necessarily have a lesser than equal perspective on what happens to my body, or a lesser than equal perspective is probably not the right word. I'm trying not to get into controversy on gender rights, but just really focusing more on the fact that like we're trying just to make fairness and justice across all genders, across men, women, and like colonies versus mainland, all of it. So they are pretty excited overall. They're saying lucky to be alive right now. And that's always going to be a good statement to say that you are lucky to be alive right now. But they are in this really, really intense time of change. And that is something that I wouldn't necessarily say relates to human trafficking awareness and prevention, as well as rehabilitation, which I will definitely be covering more about rehabilitation because that's where I'm most passionate about. But nonetheless, they are making history. And we as a nation do have the ability to make strong history here. With the upcoming elections and just the turmoil that has resulted from 2020 into today, it's just been a time of change. It's a time of revisiting what it means to work, what it means to be in a sense of autonomy for our nation. So, you want a revolution? I want a revelation. Like, that is probably, again, one of the most profound statements of the entire play. I would say that's probably my top 10. You want a revelation? I want a revelation. Like, I want a mindset shift about human trafficking in the United States. I'm not necessarily looking for a revolution. It's going to be very, very much an uphill battle, pun intended, to have a full revolution on human trafficking. But if we can have a revelation, if we can change the mindset, if we can change the narrative, if we can actually come together as a collective, we can really make some differences. So listen to my declaration. We hold these truths so evident that all men are created equal. Like, that is a declaration. That is why I decided to actually create this mini series about not only this play and the founding fathers and the founding of our nation, but also the declaration of, look, here I am. I'm here. I'm standing. I made it through, but I made it through the battle. But we actually are all together still in this war. It's this silent, cold war, but it is still a war. So, oh, I am lucky to be alive right now. And I am in one of the greatest cities in the world. So New York City is phenomenal. I love it. It has a dear place in my heart, in my soul. But right now, I actually am residing in Miami. I try to visit New York as much as possible. I might live there again one day. It's just my current chapter, but that is a little bit more personal versus, actually talking about the play and the commentary itself. So, the Schuyler Sisters, they're coming in with a whole new energy, this inquisitive, naive, but ready to go and explore the world and understand the world more energy. And as they grow in the play and as young girls transform their lives and grow into educated women, they're also transforming the narrative. So they're taking their best shot, and I'm excited to see where it goes.